Advice I would give is you don't have to start a weekly show. Start with a monthly show. Batch record a couple and maybe have 6 ready to go so that if anything else comes up, start off a little bit slower paced and see what your results are, what your metrics are, and you can build a strategy from there. But there's a lot of different things you can do, and I think starting it and getting it off the ground is almost the hardest challenge, and just being able to keep it consistent and being able to tell those stories in a different format, test it out. Like, what's the worst that could happen?
Hey, welcome to the Higher Ed Storytelling University podcast on the EdUp Experience Podcast Network. This is a show dedicated to helping higher ed marketers tell better stories, create better content, and enroll more students. My name's John Azzoni. I'm the founder at Unveiled, and we're a video production company working specifically with college marketing teams to make it easy for them to scale up and even automate their student and alumni success stories through our subscription approach. And you can learn more about that at unveiled.tv, and that's UNVEILD.tv. If you're listening to this podcast for the first time, go ahead and subscribe. We'd love to have you. And if you're wanting your college or university's content to resonate on a deeper emotional level with prospective students, with alumni, with parents, whatever, I want you to subscribe to my free newsletter. Every week I send out tips and insights on creating more emotionally resonant content, including examples and best practices from other institutions, articles and blog posts, that week's podcast episode, and much more. So head over to unveiled.tv/newsletter and sign up. All right, let's get on with the show. My guest today is Kate Young. Kate is the host, writer, and producer of This Is Purdue, an award-winning podcast that highlights exciting stories of innovative Boilermakers and shares them with a global audience. And today we're taking you sort of behind the scenes of This Is Purdue and its impact on the university's brand. And we'll probably talk about a bunch of other stuff, but Kate, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I am so excited. I was telling you before this, I have been listening to your show and a couple episodes to prep for this, and I'm really excited to be here.
Cool. Well, so we always start with a little icebreaker. So tell us something that people would be surprised to know about you.
Okay. So the first part of this is that I feel like it's timely and relevant right now. I'm a huge Swiftie. I was born 2 days before Taylor Swift, December 15th, 1989.
Wow.
Grew up listening to her music, just absolutely love her. Got the chance to go to her Eras tour in June. So,
Cool.
but the main part of why I'm telling you that too is because I've always been into pop culture. I love reality dating shows, The Bachelor franchise, Love is Blind, all that good stuff. So I actually started a hobby podcast with one of my friends and a former coworker who worked with me in news back in the day. And being able to learn the inner workings of how podcasting works and how you promote a show and the consistency of getting it out every week, and just all of the things that you learn behind the scenes. I taught myself how to edit. So now when I'm in a pinch, I can quick edit This Is Purdue if I have to. But just learning, as a hobby and as a fun kind of side gig actually led me to getting this job at Purdue University. So I hope that story helps. If anyone out there is thinking about starting a podcast, do it, because even if it doesn't, lead to lots of money or fame, it can lead to other really cool things.
That's awesome. So we are big Swifties at the Azzoni household.
Yes. Yay.
I have to cut I had 2 daughters, 8 and 6 years old. They are huge Taylor Swift fans, and I have to cut them off. They want to listen every trip anywhere to the grocery store. It's Taylor Swift, and I'm like, I cannot listen to these songs another time.
You've probably memorized them by now.
Pretty much. I am usually, how you you're on like TikTok and you like memorize the memes and stuff,
Yes,
and you're like saying them throughout the day. That's Taylor Swift songs for me. I'm just like, and then like making up funny versions of the.
That's exactly. My husband does the same thing. Like, I think he's not listening, but really in reality, how could he not be listening? Because I'm always blasting it, and then he'll come up with his own version all of a sudden, and I'm like, so you do like Taylor Swift?
Yeah. So we just got a puppy. She's a mini golden doodle. And she's she's in training right now to be a therapy dog. My wife is a trauma therapist.
Oh wow.
So I say that because we had to name her, and my daughters got to pick the middle name, and of course, her full name is Mabel Swifty Azoni.
I love it. I need to meet your daughters.
Yeah. So yeah, kindred spirits over here.
Yes, I love it.
And I'm super into Love Is Blind. Like, I am more into that show than a human should be.
I agree. I think there's a new series coming out soon, or a new season, I should say. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, we watched the Brazil one, which is
okay.
all dubbed in American, which is really, it takes some getting used to.
Yeah.
But anyway, we could talk about Love Is Blind. All that could be a whole nother episode. Anyways,
it really could.
So it is Valentine. I didn't prep you with this part because I wanted this to be a impromptu thing. It's Valentine's Day when we're recording this, and I bought my oldest daughter, Ellie, I bought her, part of her Valentine's Day was a Would You Rather Valentine's book. I usually buy the kids like a book plus candy and other stuff. So I pulled out 2 Would You Rather Valentine's related questions, and let's see which side of the coin you fall on.
Okay.
So Kate, would you rather eat a box of tuna flavored Valentine's chocolates or a bunch of lollipops that taste like sour rotten milk? These are obviously questions formulated for kids, so
I think I'm gonna go with the tuna flavored chocolates. The suckers would take a while, would like be in your mouth for a while, and you'd have that taste, whereas the chocolates, I think I could try to down them and get it over with.
Yeah, I think tuna and chocolate has a better chance of being a good combination than sour milk and anything. Yeah.
Great. Yep. That's what I'm going with.
Yeah, good choice. Okay. And then lastly, would you rather have a heart-shaped head and never be able to wear a hat again, or would you rather have a heart-shaped feet and never be able to wear shoes again?
Definitely going with the heart-shaped head, because I don't really wear hats anyway. I feel like hats are sometimes hard to pull off, and so I'm going to keep my shoes and my shoe game going and avoid hats. That's fine with me.
Okay. And you're free to use any of these questions on your podcast. I mean, feel free to take inspiration from, how this episode has started here.
I think that could really throw off the guests, and I might be here for that. Like, what is their reaction to that?
Yeah. Okay. So give us a broad overview of the podcast.
Yeah. So This Is Purdue is the official university podcast. So we are doing shows and episodes around all different topics related to Purdue. Purdue's very into engineering, heavy STEM focus. We have all different types of programs. The College of Liberal Arts, athletics is huge. We're part of a massive Big Ten school that loves all things athletic. So sometimes we focus our episodes around that and tell stories around some of our athletic-centered guests and coaches and players. So it's a variety of topics, but the whole goal is really to tell these incredible stories that are coming out of Purdue University. And I know we'll touch on some of those here soon, but it's really, it's brand awareness. It's getting it out there on social media so that people know the podcast exists, right? A lot of times we hear, I didn't know Purdue had a podcast. I'd be interested in that. So making sure with that consistency, getting it out on schedule, on time. And again, like using that, all the amazing, social media accounts and presence that we have on social with alumni and other fans to promote it and let people know that the show exists and this level of storytelling and this format exists for them to hear more about Purdue and what we're doing here.
Cool. And you told us a little bit already in our an intro question here, but how did you arrive at being the host of This Is Purdue?
Yeah, I've had quite a journey. I graduated from Purdue in 2012. I was part of the College of Liberal Arts, so proud Boilermaker myself, and I started in news. So I was in a newsroom. I was a producer back when, social media, you'd post once a day on Facebook. Instagram didn't exist. Dating myself, but so lots
People
of
would
writing,
post on your
a little
wall.
bit of yeah, you post it on your wall.
Post it on your wall on Facebook.
Brands had like what 500 people maybe liking them at the time. So it was quite a journey. I did a little bit of on-air work as well. And then I got the news stability of local news isn't what it used to be. So decided to branch off. I got into public relations. I did some sports marketing for IndyCar, different sports around Indianapolis. So that was really fun and exciting, lots of traveling. And then I decided to try my hand at a startup opportunity that came my way. So really small company, and it was all professional podcasting and B2B based podcasting. So that was when I first came into the professional world of podcasting. Then, like I said, I started that hobby show, knowing that I kind of knew how to start a podcast, so why not try it myself? And then I got a LinkedIn message one day from Purdue, and they said, "Hey, we're hiring a host for this official university podcast. Are you interested?" And the rest is history. But
yeah,
I would say LinkedIn is obviously very important. And John, I know you're on there a lot, but having a presence and being in the podcast space kind of at an earlier time has really been beneficial when I think about like finding my niche and even like your personal brand, just posting as much as you can. I really think that helped me get this opportunity at Purdue, and I've been here 3 years now.
That's awesome. That's such a cool journey. Yeah, I love being on LinkedIn. And I love just like the community that's building. I honestly I actively did not want to start a podcast. Like when I left the previous company I was working at and started Unveiled, my boss at the previous company was a huge podcaster. He's got a couple of big ones. He was always interviewing somebody. I'm like, that sounds exhausting. I'm an introvert. I do not want that to be my marketing story. And then I just kind of stumbled into it. I was like, well, I have this storytelling presentation that I do. So I was like, I'll just record the audio of it and then have a reason to send that to people, for cold outreach. And then I was like, okay, that was actually kind of fun. I'll write another episode, and it just kind of snowballed from there. But like, I love the community that podcasting has given, me personally. I think it's I've made so many rich relationships with people in higher ed and people outside of higher ed, and just to have a platform for people to come on it's a very powerful tool when you can build it up to have a little bit of momentum. Just the effect on like the community in your life, I think, if nothing else, is very strong.
Yes, absolutely agree.
Quick break here to dispel a myth. That myth is this: if you already have an internal videographer or video team at your college, then it doesn't make sense for us to work together. Now, you may be expecting me to say, oh, that's a myth. It's not true. Well, actually, in some cases, it is true. If you maybe have a robust video team, multiple people manning multiple different stations and operations, and you're telling stories, and when your marketing team has an idea for a video, you can get that pushed through the video team relatively quickly. Like, you're not going to be waiting around for months and months for them to get to that project in the queue. That's a perfect case where you're probably good. God bless you. Go take on the world. But maybe you're one of these schools where budgets are a little tighter. Roles are combined. Your social media manager is also your content creator. Those are two separate jobs, by the way. Well, that's what my friend Shar, who at the time we recorded this, she was doing both for the institution she works at. She was the social media manager and the videographer and the photographer. Since recording this with her, they've actually moved her into a full-time videographer, photographer, content creator role. And for her sake, I'm super pumped for her. But I'm going to let her tell you about her experience with our video storytelling subscriptions and how partnering with us, in addition to the internal video work she was already doing, helped her be able to focus on the many other priorities that she had. So here's Shar.
The video subscription idea was a real godsend for me. It's been kind of life-changing in a way. I don't know if that's too strong of a statement. On a couple of different levels. As a social media manager, it was really fantastic to have this entire campaign, if you will, of student testimonials. I know that for my channels, I'm going to get a new video every single month. There's a lot of content to produce and not a lot of content creators here. So having somebody who can take that portion off my plate, it's allowed me a little bit of room to breathe and maybe focus on some other projects. Not only do you get a fully edited testimonial, you also get a delivery of all of the B-roll that was taken of that student. For instance, we have this culinary institute. And one of the projects we wanted to do is to create just a short little video connected to a QR code that on all the little chocolates that we give out in the restaurant, or if they make chocolates for a special event or for our board members or for any meetings or graduation, they can scan this QR code and up pops this video of some like really beautiful slow-mo hands making chocolate and that sort of thing. And I was able to go into this B-roll and find some fantastic shots of one of our students who did a testimonial creating these bonbons and creating cakes, and you've got the batter going and you've got the chocolate drizzling. So I know that I'm going to be able to take that footage, resize it. I can resize it vertically if I need it. I can resize it into a 1x1 if I need it. I can color grade it however I need to fit my needs. And I really don't have to travel across the state to our Culinary Institute to do a whole new shoot, because I've got that B footage at my hands. So really, that's something that I could sit down, edit for a couple of hours, have it done, and check it off the list, which is fantastic.
So if you'd like to get like Shar and bring in an outside partner like Unveiled, you can go to unveiled.tv and book a call with me. That's unveiled.tv. All right, back to the show. So tell me how the podcast fits into Purdue's marketing strategy. Because I'm thinking about like, I know of schools that want to start a podcast. I know of schools that are like, we should start a podcast, but we're not gonna anytime soon. So like, what is like the business case for This Is Purdue in terms of how it fits into the brand's strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that, we've really honed in on over the past 3 years is the strategy behind the podcast and why it matters and who's listening and who's accessing it, right? But, we have all these amazing writers. So we have the writing team creating these stories for our Persistent Pursuit page, which is the premier, storytelling place where alumni can go, Purdue fans can go, parents of students can go, their students can go there and read these stories. But then, when you boil it all down, you have the podcast, which is, of course, different than listening, than reading an article or reading a social media post, right? You can hear the guest, you can hear the nostalgia in their voice, or maybe the excitement or the sadness or the vulnerability. It's just a different experience than, reading an article. So a lot of times though, part of the strategy is, did this story do really well on our main website? Is this something that we could turn into a podcast? So creating all of those different avenues of content, we gauge too on the podcast, if this episode did really well, could it also be a written piece that we tell in 6 months when there's new updates to the story, and then we share it on social media or we create YouTube videos. So just really piecing together the content strategy as a whole and finding the right people from Purdue to tell those stories too is a big part of it. But again, it is about brand awareness. It's about letting people know there's all these little things going on that even myself as an alumni, I don't always know about, or, I want to tell people about. So that's really where the podcast comes in. And I'm thankful that, the marketing department has, just really bought into podcasting. And again, in a time when brands and companies are kind of testing out a podcast strategy, we were in it early. We started it in 2020. So knowing that we've been able to grow, we just hit 100 episodes a couple weeks ago. So there's been some really exciting growth and really good, like, just feedback and stories that we hear about the podcast, that we know it's worth it and that it's working.
Yeah. It's a really unique platform. The idea that someone will choose to just sit and listen to such a long conversation, like, yes, that's really like that sort of Netflix effect in play, where, like, if you got a show like Love Is Blind or whatever, like, you're gonna commit to it. You're gonna say, I'm going to watch this show, and you're gonna just keep watching and watching until you burn out. But, like, I mean, podcasts maybe not that bingeable, but, like, what a privilege it is to have built a platform where people want to sit and listen to you and a guest talk for a very extended period of time. Like, no other marketing is like that. I mean, we're so focused on, you know, me in being in the video world, clients are so focused on, like, creating short stuff. Like, they're always fighting against, like, the enemy is people's short attention spans, but they don't give enough credit to, like, context and how, like, I actually will not listen to a podcast if it's too short. Like, if I go to an episode and it's like 10 minutes long, I'm like, I don't want to be interrupted in 10 minutes to then switch topics. I want to really sink into something for a long time. And that's different than if I'm on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever and I'm scrolling. I don't necessarily, I'm not committing. I'm most likely not clicking on your link to go read your blog.
Right.
It's just a really interesting,
Yeah, that's super interesting too, because I've been kind of thinking through, some of our episodes are 25 minutes and some of them are 55. They're almost an hour. Our 100th episode was over an hour. So I've been like, should I be leaving more on the cutting room floor? Should I be focusing on, you know, what I think our audience will think is interesting? Or should I just let the guests talk and play out exactly, you know, their thoughts and their stories? And really, I've been leaning more towards not cutting too much and having the guest have this platform to tell the full story and not, you know, cut anything too short or, you know, place edits just to kind of place them. So I like that you said that.
Yeah. Well, for people listening too, I mean, it's just anecdotally, you know, I know there are podcasts in the higher ed space that are very much to the point, and I think that those serve a great deal of value. There are other podcasts that really meander, and you might think like, wow, if I tried that, like, people would be really bored. But, like, for example, meander's a pejorative word. That's not what I mean. But, like, for example, Josie Alquist has her podcast is Josie and the Podcast, and she interviews higher ed marketing leaders. And my favorite part about listening to her podcast is the off-topic stuff that happens, because she's always asking. I emailed her recently. I was like, I have never listened to a podcast where I'm like 1 minute getting, like, really good, like, value about, like, how to do social media, and the next minute I'm like, I should call my mom just to, you know, to say hi, you know. It's like, it's this emotional ride, you know, and I'm like, I love it. I'm like in my wood shop just listening, and I love the meandering, you know. And I think we don't give enough credit to podcasts being an opportunity to just be a real conversation and not be like, you know, we got to keep them listening. We got to worry about the drop off point, you know.
Yeah.
I've just grown to, like, not worry about it.
Yeah. I recently had an interview with, she's the HR director at Ford Motor Company, and she's a Daniels School of Business alumna at Purdue. And I was kind of, like, opening up to her about all the different career struggles, for lack of a better word, that I've had, or, like, I've gotten laid off. I've had agencies that went under because they were mismanaged. I've had this and that. And then she gave me personal advice, but I put that in the episode because I'm like, this is advice for everyone. She didn't just mean me, right? She's like, your failures are what shape you, and just this really great like topical, incredible advice that I was like, even though people don't need to know my journey necessarily, I cut that out. She shared advice that would resonate with so many people. So that's a good little thing that a story I just thought of when you said that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So thinking about a smaller school with maybe a smaller centralized marketing department, why might this format of storytelling be worth considering? Because Purdue does a lot of big, I mean, you guys are like no small cookie or whatever. I don't know what the phrase is I'm trying to, you guys are a big school, you know, and I think people look at you guys as like, okay, but Purdue has a lot of resources and they've got a whole team of writers and things, but like, what would you say to a smaller school?
I think, I've talked to other, fairly big universities who they have a podcast, and that podcast person isn't necessarily full-time on the podcast. They're writing other stories. Maybe they're in charge of the monthly newsletter or other marketing initiatives. But advice I would give is you don't have to start a weekly show. We don't have a weekly show. It's bi-weekly. It comes out every other Thursday. Start with a monthly show. Organize and put together 12 episodes, batch record a couple and maybe have 6 ready to go so that if anything else comes up, if team members are on vacation or sick or whatever it may be, or you need to allocate resources somewhere else, you can do that. But start off, a little bit slower paced and see what your results are, what your metrics are, and you can build, a strategy from there. But you can record virtually. You don't have to have all these fancy video setups, all this equipment. Some of our best interviews are done with alums who live in California and aren't going to come back to Indiana for the interview, right? So I think there's a lot you can do. Working in startups, I also had all this experience with what are really good options to use when we don't have a lot of money. So Riverside, that we're recording on right now, it's like $30 a month.
Yep.
There's different tools that, hobby podcasters use all the time too, that aren't making a big, salary or have this huge budget. So look into the resources that, there's so many out there that aren't expensive, aren't going to eat away at your budget. And then again, start small, test it out. Maybe even use different hosts. You could do an episode on one topic and, maybe a writer who's really interested in athletics is hosting that one. And then you take another, marketing employee or communications employee and have them talk about a different topic. So you're not eating up at one staff member's time maybe. But there's a lot of different things you can do. And I think, starting it and getting it off the ground is almost sometimes the hardest challenge, and just being able to keep it consistent and being able to tell those stories in a different format, test it out. Like, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
Another approach I've seen is like a seasonal approach. So you have a season come out and then you take 3 months off, 4 months, 6 months, whatever you need to do to organize for the next season. But then your audience also is aware, I'm not going to get this weekly or bi-weekly or monthly on my feed. It's going to drop as a season, such as Love is Blind on Netflix, right?
Yeah, I like the seasonal approach, and I think that is a real smart way to reduce overwhelm for people, because you can batch record these, or going monthly or something like that. It's really I think it's a lot of the post production that's hard. That I think I don't know this for sure, but I think that might be the thing that scares a lot of people off, is like, okay, I have this episode, but then what do I do with it? I gotta, get a transcript. I gotta, optimize this for social. Yep. I gotta do all this stuff. And one thing I found that was really transformational for me was going on Upwork and hiring 2 virtual assistants that one edits the podcast and the other one preps the episode for the editor and kind of like, it's like the project manager. So literally, like, all I do for this episode is have the conversation, write a few notes, on like what maybe, oh, look out for this part, cut that out or whatever. And that's it. And it just shows up, you know, in my feed every Wednesday.
Yeah.
It is the best. So
yeah, and I know same with like even graphics in my startup life, we found people on now I can't remember. Fiverr.
Fiverr. Yeah.
And they would create like a graphics template. And so you can just plug and play with the guest headshot and switch out the titles and the episode numbers, but you know, you don't have that pressure of like, I don't have a designer on the team. You know, you can workshop a couple things and use outside resources when you have to, when it makes sense.
Yeah, I've had freelancers out of Fiverr design templates for me in Canva, and that's huge. Every proposal that I send out to a client is done through Canva, on a nice, cool designed, branded template that I had made, and that just and everything is just plug and play, just copy and paste. You know, for the podcast, it's the cover image in Canva that I had designed, and then all I'm doing is changing the title and then popping their headshot in there, and you know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, as they say in the business world.
Right. Right. Even my personal podcast, I paid $30 and they came up with an intro outro song. Like a musician on Fiverr. I mean, it was amazing. Best $30 ever. I like just taking things off your plate. There are a lot of resources that you can kind of play around with if you're on a budget. Yeah.
Fiverr is one of the best kept secrets, I think, that not enough people use for very task oriented things. I've used it for so many things. I had a virus enter my website at one point several years ago, and it was like it wouldn't work, and I was like, I have no idea where to even start with this, because I'm not a coder or anything.
Yeah.
I just hired a guy for $15 in India.
Oh.
He went in there, boom, 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 done. The next morning I woke up, it was fixed. It's just
best $15 you ever spent, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the Purdue research series. So I really like this, and I am really gravitating lately towards research content on, you know, for schools to be publishing research content, because I just personally find it very interesting. But tell me about that series, and why is it its own thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, after a couple years going episode to episode, all these various topics, it was kind of discussed like, what can we do with the really, you know, technical STEM-based, you know, or not STEM-based, honestly, research, the really important research that, again, maybe our alumni don't know is happening, maybe media doesn't know is happening on the outside. Like, what are these things that make Purdue so unique and special, and how can we highlight that, and how can we highlight how Purdue's researchers are providing these like practical solutions to the world's toughest challenges? How is Purdue like how are we changing the world? So we honed in on a couple of our experts, you know, based on university initiatives. What is our president, Mung Chang, really focused on for Purdue and our growth? So we came up with 4 different topics, and one of the episodes has 2 different food science professors on it. So we had 5 different guests total, but we honed in on these topics that are, you know, either really hot in the news or, you know, timely, and you know, took it from there. So a really good example is Purdue's research and education with the semiconductor world. You know, there's a huge shortage. It's being outsourced overseas. How can we educate engineers in the US, in Indiana, and encourage them to, you know, get internships, go into careers with this semiconductor technology, and grow that and really solve that problem? And so that was a great example of actually a shorter episode. So that episode was around 25 minutes. and it was short, succinct, to the point. Then some of our other episodes within the series are a bit longer, and we, like you said, kind of talked about different things. One of the professors works on NASA's James Webb Space Telescope. So he, is directly working with NASA on this massive initiative, and he lives in West Lafayette, is a professor at Purdue and has his hands in this incredible research. So, but he focused a little bit on, we love the West Lafayette community. My wife owns a business here. So kind of more of that, again, like that nostalgia that people can feel, or like, yes, I felt the same way when I was at Purdue, that it's a large campus, but it's this community that really supports each other and is so special. And we're so glad that, we chose to come here and work here and be part of this community. So there's a lot of different storytelling angles within the research series, but the other one was food science. Like I said, we had two professors who spoke to that. So food safety, sustainability, how they're educating people in countries, that don't know as much about food safety, or why are we getting sick from this? And world hunger. How can we provide more food as the population keeps growing? And then our last one was on bioarchaeology. So, the ancient Nubians and how they interacted with the ancient Egyptians, and more of that kind of, if you're really into history, then that would be an episode that appealed to you. But how those findings and in that research impact how, healthcare is treated today, and how, humans and different, like how we all interact together today can be learned from that research from all those years ago. So lots of different aspects and components, whatever you might find the most interesting. They all varied immensely.
That's really cool. I like that. I listened to the semiconductor episode, and I was like, I didn't know what a semiconductor was until I listened to that. So now I know how important
I was right there with you. Yeah, I was right there with you. Again, I'm liberal arts. I'm more communication, writing, speaking, all of those good things. But, learning about the importance of semiconductors, like, oh, wow, this is a huge initiative that Purdue is leading and is really at the forefront of, and, hearing why it's important. So yeah, I'm glad you listened to that one.
Yeah. So I think, like, and when we think about storytelling, I think that we often, okay, my kids just got home. So if you hear screaming, I'm sorry. Yesterday I had my youngest, I did an interview, and I brought her into my office, and I was like, you are the screaming police. Can you help me? Can you make sure nobody in the house is screaming? She did so good. She took it so seriously.
That's the way to do it, man. You have tricks.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I think when we think about storytelling, we often think about like social proof stories, like student testimonials, alumni testimonials, stuff like that. I think this research series is a good way to kind of blend the two, because they're people that are connected to Purdue, right? And I just think there's like such a big opportunity to tell, the stories of world issues. What's going on in the world that people care about, that we want to learn about and learn from through a Purdue lens, or whatever your school's brand is. I was just curious, what's been the response from your audience on the research stuff versus the other episodes?
Yeah, we wanted to, again, stay in branding and keep that brand awareness continuously being built up. So we didn't tailor too many things, but we did some subtle things. We added some special music. We designated, the graphics had designation that this was the research series. So when you're scrolling through Spotify or any of the other platforms. That was part of the title, and it was part of our episodic graphics on social media too. So that was really fun creatively too, to work together as a team to think about, okay, we don't want to shift things a ton. This is still part of This Is Purdue, but how can we have these little tweaks that let our audience know that these episodes are going to be a bit different? They're scripted a bit differently. I think there's really cool like feedback that we've seen just through certain like anecdotal stories. So I went to Podcast Movement back in August, the largest podcast conference in the country, and someone came up to me and was like, "Oh my gosh, I listened to your episode about semiconductors." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And she's like, "Yeah, it was, I saw it on LinkedIn, and I work for a higher ed company, and I work with a lot of student engineers who are interested in, where they can take their career. And so I sent them that episode and said, what have you thought about semiconductors? Or have you thought about an internship with a company producing semiconductors or helping, solve some of those issues?" So that was really cool. That was the first time that I was like, oh, wow, someone approached me and knew This Is Purdue, which is always just super special.
Yeah.
Another really cool story is that one of the guests, I can't, it's still confidential, so unfortunately I can't share everything, but one of the guests got this really cool opportunity to do something.
It's Taylor Swift.
If I had Taylor Swift on the show, oh my gosh.
Sorry, the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
It's Taylor Swift.
Yeah, it was Taylor Swift, so I'm not telling any secrets. But this guest got this really cool opportunity to do like a broadcast opportunity, I should say. And he said that this person Googled and was trying to find the right fit for this and who are we going to feature, and sure enough, our podcast came up. So then he listened to the podcast. So then he heard about, oh, all these students love this professor, and he knows XYZ. Listen to him talk about on this podcast. This is our guy. This is who we want. And so I just got that email about a week ago, and I was
cool.
like, this is perfect. I know people are focused on metrics and how many listens do you have? How many subscribers? What can you tell us about that? But those stories that like direct feedback that it's very rare in podcasting, right? But like when those stories do come, it's just painting the perfect picture of why podcasting is important and why, it's such a great brand awareness play. It's a great storytelling play. So those are a couple of the stories that recently that I've heard about.
Yeah, I think the double-edged sword of podcasting is the metrics don't really tell the full story. Because if you look at my podcast metrics, like downloads per episode, it looks like not that many people listen. But in the real world, I'll like reach out to, because every day I spend, I just try to spend half an hour every day, just making new connections and like having meaningful connections with people on LinkedIn rather than just like LinkedIn knowing people. And on more than one occasion, I've reached out to someone for the first time and they've been like, "Oh, I listened to your podcast." And I'm like, I'm always so surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, once in a while, you'll get like, I had a director at a little small liberal arts school reach out to me and was like, "I quote your podcast all the time to my team,"
Oh.
And I'm like, "Oh, that's so great." And what's great about it is like, when you do hear that feedback, it's usually like a very deep, like rich thing, because people are choosing to listen to you for like up to sometimes like an hour. They're like, they're really invested. And it's just, and it's so cool. I just think it's such a privilege, to be able to provide that value for people, that they would have enough of a rich experience to come up to you and be like, something happened because of your podcast, or I listened to it for this or that reason.
It's the ultimate compliment. Like how, I think when people give that feedback too, they don't understand. I try to tell them, but I'm like, this compliment, this feedback makes not my whole day, it makes my whole month. Like I can always reflect back and say, well, this happened because of the podcast and this is a really cool story. So yeah, I think that feedback is so special to podcasters.
Yes. I will say, if you are listening to this and you like a podcast, definitely take a minute to leave a review, a rating, anything.
Yes.
Because what people don't do is that. Like you can tell people on your podcast up and down all day long, send me an email if you want to chat, like, leave a review, whatever. Like, we really want to hear from you. And like, it just makes our lives, to even just get any sort of feedback on an episode.
Yes. Yes. Or people will send emails to the general like marketing communications email, and then like talking about the podcast, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like you took the time out of your day to find on our website like the contact us and like send that email. So it's really cool and special. Yeah.
So where do you see like the biggest untapped potential here, like around using research podcasts like this as marketing tools for universities?
Yeah, I think there's so many different avenues that you can go and things that you can do with it, but really just, I think sometimes when you work at a university or you work in higher ed, you're not quite always aware of like, wait, slow down. This is really cool. I can't believe that we're doing this. Or you're having a conversation with your mom or, a sibling or a friend, and you mention something about work and they're like, wait, what? That's so cool. That's so meaningful. That's really going to change things for a lot of people. So I think just immersing yourself in that, in your university and in that culture, and working with campus partners. Hey, what is your school doing? What is your college doing? And hearing their thoughts, and hey, this professor, I know people say this professor's great, this professor's awesome, he's really good at this, she's really good at that. But really listening to those resources and those people on campus who are really involved in some of these topics. And maybe, doing a pre-interview or getting some extra additional research done yourself. But like, where could we take this story? Or like as a marketing department, hey, we got this pitch about this person or this research that's being done. And then having those creative minds, come up with different ideas, different video ideas of how to shoot the interview or where to shoot it. Sometimes that's really fun to like, where are we going to shoot it that reflects what our guest does and why it's important. And so taking those relationships with campus partners, those stories that you're hearing, even on Facebook, if there's a comment, hey, so-and-so is doing this and my kid said it's the best class he's ever taken. And I think those are a lot of resources that are right in front of us, but maybe we don't always know what to do with, or we don't dig into it further. So just taking time to listen and get some feedback or do your additional research, like I said, to dive into that topic. And it could be one of the best episodes you've ever done. And also, we've done episodes that I don't necessarily think will be really successful. And sure enough, we get all this feedback and all these listens, and I'm like, oh wow, like that's a super interesting component too in podcasting, where sometimes if you aren't sure how an episode's going to perform and it surprises you, that's like a great takeaway too when you look at your show overall and how it's doing and everything.
Yeah, I like what you said about just talking to campus partners and finding out what's going on, because I think you don't have to have a research school to take cues from this approach. It really is about like just broadening your horizons of what storytelling is about, and just getting people onto a platform that's just low pressure, and you don't have to feel like, okay, this person's doing something cool, well now I gotta like get a whole video crew and babysit this project for 6 months, and or we got to bring in our writer and put it in the writing queue to like write a blog about or whatever. It really, like, that's what I like about podcasting, is just like, you're doing something cool, quick message to you, like, hey, you want to come on my show, and talk about that?
Yes.
And people are like, yeah, cool.
Yes.
And then we do it, and
Yeah.
there's like, and I think that's like really, in terms of content marketing, that's what really takes a lot of the pressure off of doing storytelling on that format. Is it is just very just casual, and you can act on those opportunities when someone is doing something cool. And I think like just like literally every professor could do their own episode, or even if it's just it doesn't even have to be a podcast, but even just sit them down for a video interview and just have them talking on camera. It doesn't have to be like fancy B-roll, and it doesn't have to look like a movie,
Right.
But like they I'm sure have something interesting in their career that they've done that you can really zero in on, and stop. And don't think about it as like we have to find some way to market the university through this. It's really just like, just shine the light on something cool that's happening. And it came
Right.
out of someone from your school. And I think we don't give enough credit to how powerful that actually is.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, okay. So on your YouTube page, you guys repurpose content a lot, which I think is cool. And that's also another great, benefit of podcasting. So what, do you guys have a repurposing strategy? How are those clips like distributed? How do you guys think about like your YouTube page in that format?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just celebrated our 1-year birthday of creating our own YouTube page, branching off from the official, Purdue University account. We were posting all of our podcast clips on there. And then, we really wanted to dive into focusing on podcast content because, from a 30-minute episode, from an hour-long episode, there's all these amazing nuggets that you can pull. And if people don't want to listen to the full thing, they can hear the 3-minute clip that the guest said about X topic. So
right.
We had all this amazing video because we were, utilizing a video strategy, whether it's virtual or in person on campus. And then also like our YouTube team and our paid team has, all this data about YouTube Shorts. That's the greatest thing. That's the next best thing. We got to get in on that. So we had all this great data to show us what we should be doing. So from there, and you can kind of tell in the interview, I'm like, that's a quote, or that's a snippet I'm going to use, so anything that stands out to you in the interview, but creating those kind of like snack sized content bits for social media. Again, if you're on YouTube and you don't want to listen to the whole episode or watch the whole video interview, you can just simply click on a clip that's a little bit shorter. So, we put a lot of time and effort into our social media strategy. So our trailer video is kind of just that, like a movie trailer. It's previewing the episode. So we're taking like the best little snippets from the guest and piecing that together for a 1-minute-long clip. And so while it's going on YouTube, it's also going on all of our social platforms.
That's a great idea. That's a great way to launch an episode, is make a little trailer.
Yeah, and I always say it's what are we choosing for this that is going to make people click and want to listen to the whole thing. So we have this, I'm so excited about it. We have an upcoming athletics episode coming out, and one of the guests in it says, well, do you want to know the real story? And I'm like, that needs to be the opening thing for every possible clip that we do. Like, I mean, it was just gold. And as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, because I've never had a guest say that. Well, I don't know. Do you want to hear the real behind the scenes story? And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly why we're here, right? Just knowing that there's those moments, and knowing that, anything you can do to hook them, and get those people on social or get those people on YouTube to either subscribe to the YouTube page, go to the full interview. That's a lot of, our strategy, and it's been evolving. Lately, our YouTube team is like, shorts, that's where it's at. So we're taking those 1 to 3 minute YouTube clips and kind of scrapping those and focusing on creating like 3 YouTube shorts instead. And so again, that's a minute or under. So how can I cut certain things to help my video producer get it under a minute? Whereas if the full thought is a 3-minute long answer to the question or a 3-minute long thought. So that's been kind of fun and challenging to think about how can we cut this to make it a short and make it shorter content for people. So yeah, and then of course all the trends that the Instagram Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, you have all that great trending stuff that you can play around with.
Well, I noticed that you're even starting to create content for that channel that's not from the podcast. So I noticed you did the what's the trend? The of course, I'm a podcast host. Of course, I'm blah blah blah. I thought that was super cute. So yeah, what's that been like? Where does that kind of stuff fit in the strategy?
Yeah, it's grown a ton. So obviously, YouTube Shorts are fairly new. And, Purdue made the decision we don't have a TikTok account. So we really went all in on Instagram Reels. And then again, that repurposing strategy of, wait a minute, if we have an Instagram Reel, we can put this on YouTube as well as a short. So, but also knowing what makes sense for a Reel versus what makes sense to try on as a YouTube short. So, yeah, that's a great example. I did a Reel and a short for this instance of, I'm a podcast host. Of course I love, having these headphones on. Like, is it really an episode without them?
Yeah.
And playing, kind of like, teasing, making a little bit of fun at being a podcast host. So that was a trend that, we saw a lot of students doing with their content. We saw a lot of just companies, brands doing it. So we did that. Another good one was back in the day, that Pedro Pascali meme of him eating pizza.
Oh, yeah. I've used that one too.
It's been a minute, but yeah. So we did an interview. The president of Pizza Hut is a Purdue alum. He graduated from our business school. So yeah, we went to Pizza Hut to shoot the interview, obviously. And then we were like, we have to use this meme. Like, it came out at the perfect time of when we were releasing the episode. So we did this big play on, I love pineapple on my pizza. I might be causing some drama there, depending on what side you're on. But I asked the president of Pizza Hut, is pineapple a good topping on pizza? And that got a ton of engagement. We had the Pedro meme up as a YouTube short of like me waiting around to hear if pineapple is an appropriate, topping on pizza. I'm sure it was a lot better than that. I'm just paraphrasing, but it was a way to take that trending content and have it apply, to the podcast. And sometimes it's luck, right? But sometimes, I saw the of course strategy or of course trend going around, and I'm like, I'm going to capitalize off this. I'm going to shoot this and let's, see what happens. And if it's, if we can piece it together and post it, and it ended up great. So there's another Reel and short that we did with one of our he was a former Purdue NFL quarterback. And so it was really simple. It was just him throwing a football. And we're like, give us like 3 tips on how to throw a football. And now when you Google how to throw a spiral, that's on Google's first page, our YouTube short with this quarterback, Curtis Painter. So it's kind of like what's going to take off and resonate with the audience. And maybe we've produced some that we think are really cool and fun and they don't take off. But it's been really fun to see that strategy grow. And again, all of the team members contributing all these great ideas and, hey, I saw this, what about this? And how could we tie that into the episode and into this short? So it's been, it's honestly just all about experimenting. Yeah,
that's awesome. I love it. So I would love to, I've been kind of on a failure kick lately. I posted a poll on LinkedIn about like something about stories of failure, and then I've followed up with those people, and I've had some people that I've done video interviews with just telling me stories of marketing failure, and those have gotten some good traction. So I want to know, can you tell me a moment where something didn't go right on the podcast?
Yeah, I was thinking through this one. So we have had a guest not show up, just like complete no-show. And we had everything set up, and these setups take, hours.
Yeah.
And it was all miscommunication. It was all good. I mean, they felt so terrible. Like I know,
oh gosh,
things happen, life happens, right? So that was one, but the other one that it goes back to that episode that's coming out soon that I was just talking about. We have an episode with 3 members of our women's basketball team who won the 1999 NCAA championship. So it's 25 years later. We're reflecting on it. They all live in different places. So how could we get all 3 together? It was a virtual interview situation. And the night before, one of the women said, I have a flight to catch, like my plans changed. Can we postpone? Can we change the time? And it ended up that she did the interview from the airport.
Oh.
And I'm like, this is going to be a disaster. There's going to be all this background noise. There's going to be, she's going to be short on time. The value of having the 3 women together to reflect and discuss and their relationships and their friendships, it was so important to the episode. Like, was the audio perfect of her at the airport? No. But it wasn't bad, to be honest. She had headphones plugged in. Her audio was clear, and I heard some background noise at the time, but when we downloaded the track, I was like, hey, this is pretty good. And the value of having the 3 women together was more important than if her audio was, a tiny bit fuzzy or there was a little bit of background noise. So that was a failure that turned into, at the time I was really stressed about it, or, how are we going to make this work? But that's a failure that turned into, something that was essentially good. She did have to leave a little bit early. It cut out a little bit early because her plane was boarding, but those are 2 things that, as I was reflecting on this question, those came to my head for sure.
Yeah, I think it's okay for the guest to have poor quality audio, but I think in my mind there's less forgiveness for like the host. Like the host should have good audio, and then I think it's expected that these guests are just virtual. They're kind of wherever. I had one of my favorite podcasts, like weird funny moments, was like I was interviewing content manager at a university, and why I started asking if like, do you have a hard stop? Because we're like kind of wrapping up the episode, but like kind of like mid question, like still kind of we haven't gotten to the outro yet. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be in another meeting right now. She's like, I'm so sorry, I have to go. So she had to jump off, and then I had to sort of like record something that sounded like I was like wrapping it up, like, okay, well, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
So
totally. Yeah. Oh yeah, sometimes I'm sure you've had experiences too where like the guest maybe doesn't open up as much as you wanted, or you ask a question and the answer is like 15 seconds and you're like, okay, I guess I'll move on to the next question. Like there's always going to be some of those awkward moments, or like, oh, could you expand on that? And some people just, that's not part of their personality, or they're not really like verbose. So I've had those too.
Yeah, I find that's where I find like the pre-interview helps a lot. As you can at least get a sense for like, how are they, what's their mode of operation here, and like how they answer questions, and then you can kind of course correct and like prepare for that. I've had guests be really short, and I'm like, man, I wish I had thought of like double the amount of questions, so that I actually have more things to ask, because we're burning through these questions here.
Yep. I've had that experience for sure.
Well, Kate, this has been super fun. Thank you so much for being here and taking us behind the scenes a little bit. Where obviously for people listening, go listen to the This Is Purdue podcast and go subscribe to their YouTube channel. I am the 556th subscriber.
Yay! Thank you, John.
So yeah. Yeah. Oh, so where can people connect with you at?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn, Kate Young. You can read, more about my bio, and of course, listen to the podcast, learn more about the podcast at purdue.edu/podcast. And then I'm also on Twitter or X, whatever people are calling it these days. Kate M. Young on there. And I also like to discuss podcasts, Love is Blind, even maybe, and Taylor Swift on Twitter. So
I want to do like an episode that's like completely off topic, and I think we should just do a Love is Blind recap and just talk about the who's who. So maybe I'll start like a side.
Please invite me on that.
Yeah, I'll start a side podcast for like the higher ed, the real higher ed people who like want to talk about like real like cool stuff. Like, let's come over here and talk about Love is Blind, or like let's unpack The Bachelor or something like that. But yeah, that'd be fun.
I was recently on my friend's podcast, and they were asking me. I came on as like the Taylor Swift correspondent. Like, okay, when she first appeared at Travis's game back in September, we did an episode, and like, is this fake? What is this? And then we just did an episode for the Super Bowl. Of all the different Taylor Swift theories, what she might wear, who she might be with in her suite. So that was really fun. So
that's awesome.
Love all the pop culture ties.
Yes, me too. All right. Well, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a blast. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. 3 things I want to give you before you go. Number 1, reminder to sign up for my free weekly newsletter, all about creating content that resonates emotionally with your audience. And you can do that at unveiled.tv/newsletter. Unveiled is spelled UNVEILD. Number 2, if you've enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Share it with your team, your boss, your dog, whatever. And if you're not already subscribed, I'd love for you to do that. Number 3, reach out to me. If you have comments, questions, you want to talk about a video project, whatever, my email is john@unveiled.tv. John is spelled JOHN. Or follow me on LinkedIn. If you're searching for me, my last name is spelled AZONI. That's all for today, and I look forward to catching you on the next episode of the Higher Ed Storytelling University podcast. Thanks.